Hello and welcome to Deep in Pact, a proud member of the Duff Network where we dive deep into Wildbow's most Canadian work 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
And we are back to talk about Void 7.2. Yeah, last chapter we had, we had all kinds of things. We went back to the police station, which honestly I'm not super happy about. I'm not super thrilled, but I'm sure it's going to go well.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Anyway, so Blake and the Cabal are at the police station. They're escaping from eyes stuck on posters, drawn on posters, I should say. They head into the spirit world as a kind of way to slip this encroaching net of Sisters of the Torch who are clearly know exactly where they are and are just closing in.
Yeah, and obviously, going to the spirit world doesn't work at all. In fact,
Nope.
When they get in there,
Makes
it's
it
not
worse.
it's not eyes drawn on a rune. Now it's actual eyes, and they've got eyelids and gross pink bits. They seem weirdly biological and gross. So that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why they thought, oh, we need to get away from the magic. We'll go into the spirit world. It doesn't. I don't think that tracks, but whatever. So we get notes of how Blake is able to see the connections from the eyes to the practitioners that are looking through them, and it kind of made me realize, I don't know if we've talked about how cool connections, visible connections, are in this universe, right? They've been obviously present ever since Blake awakened, but it's so versatile. It helps you. It's such a great tool to kind of visualize things in this literary format. Visualize the connections between things. It's so awesome. So Blake can see connections from the eye posters to the people that are looking through them in this, and this would be so much messier and less clean if Blake wasn't just able to be oh, it's these people over there and we can go over here and it all just kind of works. It's such a cool device.
Well, I think the thing that really makes it go from cool to this is amazing is how its complexity intertwines with the complexity of the site. Because when connections first sort of were introduced, I was a little skeptical about how it would make sense, because I was wouldn't everything have almost infinite connections?
Yes, yes, it does.
Yeah, and it turns out the answer is yes, and it's just your site needs to be tuned to specific frequencies, which is such a great idea, because then we can have Blake look for specific things, look for the connection as to who is looking through these papers, but then there's also plausible deniability for when he just completely misses other things.
Yeah.
Because there's so many variations that it's very believable that on this infinite spectrum of connections attached to a specific thing, he missed one of the important ones if he wasn't looking for it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of moments where Blake kind of notices something's up, goes and sees a connection that he kind of missed, but is able to, with context, pick up on it being important, which is a very cool interaction that happens.
Yeah, and obviously it fits so well into this symbolic and literary world. You're right. It's such a fantastic system, and you mentioned how great it is in a book. But what I love about it as well is it's very visual. If Pact were to ever get adapted to a visual medium, it'd work just as well. It's great.
Yeah, I wonder what it would be like. I mean, I guess you would have to not be looking through the site in an adaptation, because there would just be connections everywhere all the time otherwise.
Yeah, well, you definitely have to have some system for acknowledging when someone's using the site and really establish that whole tuning of frequencies thing. Otherwise, it could very quickly get very messy.
Yeah. So I want to pull out a quote which I just thought was funny. They've left the police station now, and Blake thinks, the weather was steadily getting worse. My clothes were soaked and the cold was seeping into me. Is this something important? I asked, raising my voice. The weather? It's important, Fell said, raising his voice to be heard. What is it? No idea. It's kind of a dumb question that whether the weather is getting worse is important or not. But I like that Fell's yeah, it's important. I don't know what the fuck it is, though.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with Conquest, the Lord of the City, and the Eye, who is sort of associated with, not weather, but, sort of natural disasters, I guess. I mean, it obviously feels like a thing. And I guess depending on based on how the chapter ends, I've sort of assumed that it's just a representation of Conquest getting pissy, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about how Conquest is kind of tied to Toronto. So you can imagine as he gets more irate, the weather gets worse.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt like there was maybe something more to it, but now I don't think that.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, okay. So they're kind of trying to escape from the Sisters of the Torch closing in on them, and Evan gets sent off to scout, and he returns with some stolen car keys, which turns out belongs to a few sisters who are stranded at their car, and Blake kind of starts talking to them, as he's wont to do.
Well, I guess their method of escape was more, let's go, like, tackle the closest ones to sort of, like, just break free.
Yeah, exactly. Let's break through, not away.
Which contrasts with how the chapter ends. But I love how Blake is always just trying to chat to people. Like, he takes advantage of the fact that these two don't have access to the car, and he's like, hey, let's
talk it out.
Yeah,
let's have a D&M. Yeah,
because we're in his head, and so we know, like, he genuinely has good intentions, and he's trying to connect with them and say, hey, like, he's maybe manipulating them a little bit, but, like, I think, he's manipulating them against Conquest. I'm not going to call someone out for that.
Yeah, sure.
Well, he is a Diabolist, so I totally also get their response where it's like, I'm not going to listen to this, like, literal snake in the garden.
Yeah.
Trying to convince me that I should be on his side.
Do you think one day Blake will get burned out on trying to talk to the people who are trying to kill him?
I mean, I hope not. Like, because that'd be... I think it
would be a bad sign, huh?
Well, that'd be like a snapping point. Like, I think, it's very human to want to just, like, connect and get along with people, and until you sort of snap and have just decided that you're against everyone or against other people. And in Blake's case, that would be against everyone, and obviously it's not what you want Diabolists doing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You definitely don't want Diabolists losing faith in humanity, I suppose. So as Blake talks to these two, and then three, we kind of get more insight into how the Sisters of the Torch actually function. They're basically just like high-powered businesswomen with magic, which is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything I hoped they'd be. I think we talked about this previously. Also, so the two that he's talking to at the moment are from university, and they sort of talk, they're like, yeah, we put in our 2 hours a week. And they're talking about it like it's fucking piano lessons.
Yeah, it's a club that they go to every Wednesday and Thursday night or whatever.
Yeah, it's so not at all like what we're used to seeing. It's amazing.
Yeah, and they kind of it's interesting because they do give the impression a bit that they're weak as a group, or maybe they're weak individually, but they do talk about how often they're underestimated. And we've seen kind of just having numbers in this, like having a group in this world actually makes you quite powerful. Like Blake and his cabal are all beginners, but they do incredibly well just because there's like 5 of them versus 2 or 3 in most encounters.
Yeah, and you got to keep in mind, if you're in a really... If this is quite a functional group, that is
which
doing
they
a
seem
good job,
to be, they seem to be quite aligned.
So far, they seem to be pretty functional, and if they're doing a good job of educating each other, then like 2 hours a week might be pretty valuable,
Yeah.
But like they do sort of treat this like, I almost want to call it like a wellness program,
Yeah, like a self-help book almost.
Yeah, because like, these two talk about how it's mostly just like a confidence thing. They're like, with this in the back of our heads, it's quite easy to be really confident in like the workplace and in your civilian life. Like this is very much for them very secondary, which is why that whole plan to outlast the weekend like seems actually like a really good idea. The more we've seen of them.
Yeah.
Because it's very much this sense of, like we're getting roped into some little war for now or whatever, but like overall, like this is a pretty sweet gig. We don't have to put in that much time, and we get these great benefits.
Yeah, like a war like this obviously happens once every like 3 lifetimes, maybe, for these people. Not very frequently, so it's not like they're constantly on the battlefield.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cool. But Blake is unable to see how cool it is, I suppose, and he kind of tries to stir up shit and just get them on his side a bit, or even just rock the boat, kind of. You get the vibe. He tells them the truth about how Conquest is just a figurehead.
Which, I like this as a tactic. I mean, it's clearly designed to put the sisters in the firing line, which isn't great. I mean, on the list of things Blake has done that are morally dubious in this arc already, it's pretty low on the scale.
Yeah, there's worse things to worry about, but yeah.
But like if he's even remotely right about all of the sisters not knowing this and Conquest really not wanting them to know this, like it's not a great short-term play. Like it obviously doesn't work out, but it is a great long-term play. Like really going around and seeding doubt in Conquest, it seems like a great idea. Like, yeah.
I mean, Blake's fated to die in the long term, so who knows if we'll get the chance to make the most of this. But
yeah.
I guess we'll get to that later.
Yeah. This did get me thinking though. This is like a bit of an aside, but I mean, I guess this isn't going to happen based on how the chapter ends. But I was wondering as I was reading this, like, if Blake confronted Conquest about Isadora, like, and it'd really be about framing it, but essentially it'd be very easy, I think, to go to Conquest and frame this whole Isadora situation in a way that's like, you don't own her, like, she considers that she's propping you up, like, she is owning and manipulating you, is, I think, a valid viewpoint, and that's not something that would gel with Conquest's being, in my opinion. So, like, a good way to get Isadora, I guess, not on side, but make it, if he could irreparably damage her relationship with Conquest, that'd be a good thing, hopefully. So I was thinking, like, he really should have, like, tried to make it clear to Conquest that Isadora is maybe not as subordinate as she makes out.
Yeah, I think it's an okay plan, but it is kind of hard to predict how these how these things will react sometimes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, Blake has kind of tried to stir up shit, but it doesn't seem to work. I mean, obviously they're a pretty cohesive unit, but, you know, they also don't quite trust Blake, and they also, I guess, don't fully understand the ramifications of what that means. But it's a good try.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's sort of what I was talking about. Like, I don't think this was ever going to work in the short term. Like, I don't think this sort of revelation was ever going to be the one where they just all drop their weapons and join his side all of a sudden. But it's definitely the sort that will, over, say, the next few weeks, really start to test their relationship with them. And since his plan is, in theory, to outlast Conquest for right now, that's still a good result.
Yeah. Long-term play, I guess. Yeah, we'll see. So Blake's talking to the sisters, and they kind of let slip, seemingly, that the elder sister is being held as a hostage by Conquest in order to get the other sisters, you know, to toe the line.
Yeah, and it's sort of one of those situations where she's not like... I didn't get the impression she's in chains or she's like locked up, but it's just Conquest is keeping her nearby, and it's almost an implicit rather than an explicit threat.
Yeah, I think so.
Like, just keeping her nearby and counting on the rest of the sisters to
know that that's a threat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they don't, and so they you know, Blake tells them, like, hey man, you're putting yourself in the line of danger here. Just abandon the elder sister, like, get the hell out of here. But they won't. You really get the impression that they care about the elder sister, and they're very, like, loyal to each other. It's sweet.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I didn't get the impression at all, and it wasn't until you actually wrote that I was like, oh, maybe they're, like, under some oath or something, but that's not at all how it even comes across. It's very much like, I think, you do just get the impression that they're all just loyal to the sisterhood.
Yeah, I guess a sorority is a pretty good analogy for it, right? I mean, it is kind of explicitly a sorority in some ways, but yeah, I don't know. It's a funny group, this one. But eventually the peaceful discussion breaks down and a fight is about to break out. But Tyler throws Leonard's bottle at a wall and he kind of disperses, comes out as a gas and just knocks out the sisters immediately. So yeah, they do seem weak, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, they did kind of get sneak attacked in a way, but yeah, like, you know, Leonard got some action. I mean, obviously it kind of wipes him out, but
yep, he's seems to be done now.
I mean, considering how fragile he was when Blake first got him, like, got pretty good use out of him, honestly. Like, call that a win.
Well, I guess. Let's talk about using him, shall we? Because I think it's important to point out that Blake... I mean, obviously Blake and Leonard didn't have as much of a connection as, like, Blake and June, for example, but he doesn't seem to see them or see Leonard here as much as human as he did before. He doesn't take this hard, or it doesn't even... I mean, he kind of remarks on it, but that's basically it.
No, you're right. There's no sense of using up Leonard. It does feel much more like using up a tool.
Yes, exactly.
And in fact, after you wrote that, I sort of noticed something and went back and double-checked. And so in 7.1, June is never... The word June does not exist in 7.1. She's always referred to as the hatchet. And then I went back to 6.12 and 6.11, and similarly, like, he doesn't really refer to her with the same warmth that he used to.
She's kind of become dehumanized, right?
Yeah, or something in Blake has changed. So I don't know if there weren't enough references to the hatchet or not to June to make me really concretely come down either way. But this is definitely something I want to keep an eye on now, because there's definitely this sense of less attachment to them as sentient beings than there used to be.
Yeah, I think it's something to keep an eye on for sure. So Blake and the Cabal head to leave after taking out the sisters, but before they do, Blake decides not to slit any of their throats, but warns them that he could have, which is a great way to get them on side.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking creepy, because he unless I'm misreading this, he wrote that on the neck of one of them.
So like, on their necks, he kind of makes a dotted line where he would have cut their throats and writes, I could have cut your throat, but I chose not to. Conquest would have, or something like that, right?
Yeah, which is still pretty fucking creepy. Like, I don't know if that's really
that's gonna help for sure, Blake.
Like, leave a sticky note on one of their hands or
give
something.
Give them a text, man.
Yeah. Or like, just leaving them alive may have already made the point. Like, I don't know. This for me, it was just like reading that. I was just like, this is probably unnecessary. Like, write it on the hand or something. You know, like, Jesus.
Oh boy. Anyway, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Well, it's just like it's funny how much the opening to this arc is contrasted to me with the opening of Arc 6, because I remember, like, Arc 6 opened with Blake, you know, meeting up with all his friends and then sort of awakening them. And there was very much a sense at the beginning of Arc 6 of, hey, look, this is Blake and all his close friends, and he's still very connected and human, and that's his biggest asset. And then that sort of got challenged in the second two-thirds of, the latter two-thirds of Arc 6.
Yeah.
And then Arc 7's really just opened up with Blake being pretty fucking creepy and horrific. Like,
you do feel like he's kind of going off the deep end a bit, don't you?
It's very different to what I had. So hopefully Arc 7's going to do the inverse of Arc 6, and we're opening with Blake being terrible, and then the rest of the arc is going to be good.
If I know one thing about Wildbow stories, it's definitely not that the protagonists make increasingly worse moral decisions over the course of the story. So I'm sure it will be fine. So they head out, and you know, the group that were at the police station reunite with the rest of them. The weather is getting worse and the world's getting darker, and they kind of head to their closest safe house.
Yeah, and I have to read out one of the quotes from early in this section, where Blake just says, "The gap between the two worlds was swiftly closing. Darkness," I thought, which just... I don't know what it was about this line, but I think this is the bit where it really just clicked for me, and I was like, oh man, like, shit's getting really intense right now. Like, this was...
Yeah.
All the weather stuff had been going on, and like, there's... That feeds into this undercurrent as you're reading of, like, shit's getting intense, but there was something about this line that just made me suddenly go, like, oh, we're in for some shit. Like, Conquest is losing it. Or like, things are coming to a head.
Yeah, and I love how, you know, obviously a lot of stories will have, you know, it's raining, the weather's raining now because it's a sad scene, right? And it's kind of like the weather responds to the story. But I love that there's actually, like, in-text reasons for this to be happening. The weather's getting worse and the power's cutting out. That's because Conquest is getting, you know, less stable, and so is the city. Like, it's just very fun. It's just a very fun way of having this reason for literary devices, which I guess is the motto of Pact.
Yeah, you're right. It's very Pact, and it's great. Like, yeah, as you said, this is something that a lot of movies in particular do is make it rain or things or something when things are intense, and Pact gets to do that and have it in universe makes sense.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, yeah. So the group head to the safe house, which unfortunately turns out to be not that, because, surprise, Conquest and his champions knew exactly where they were. So the shepherd comes in and brings a bunch of really spooky wraiths who kind of attack the real humans in this shop. I think it's a grocery store.
Yeah.
And they kind of feed off of the negative emotions, cause a riot, and basically just start fucking shit up.
Yeah, and so I want to call out one line that sort of is as they're approaching this grocery store where the shit really hits the fan. And Blake says, "We marched as a group. I could see how the others crowded around one another, shoulder to shoulder. Only Maggie, Fell, and I stood apart." Which is just... I mean, there's a lot to talk about here. This is a great image. Like, the three of them being isolated from everyone else is just so on point. I love this. I love this line, and I love this image.
Yeah. It's good. But yeah, things start to go really badly now. They basically have to fight their way through a bunch of horrific ghosts.
Yeah, man, these Wraith are fucking terrifying. Like, so they sort of hybridize with these people that they, like, subsume.
Yeah, I don't know how to... Yeah, it's a chaotic scene, right? Which is great, because you really get put on the back foot. Like, one moment you're safe, and the next moment, literally, wraiths are, like, eating people, and there's a riot, and everything's popping off, and you're just kind of like, wait, what's... Yeah, you're really, like, caught off guard by it.
Well, yeah, and because it was a bit confusing for me at first. Like, I didn't really understand what was happening, and then you sort of find out. So the Wraith are finding hosts that are complementary to them and like hybridizing with them. Yeah. So you get like this woman who finds like a young child and forms like this half woman, half child, half man, half woman, like weird wraith creature that's like bleeding out of orifices apparently. There's a whole bunch of what the fuck with these wraith. Like, forget demons, these things are terrifying.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But don't worry, it can always get worse, Elliot, because the shepherd's not the only one here. The astrologer apparently is exerting her power here too, because there's some kind of warrior spirit that has rocked up with a giant fucking bow and arrow and just starts popping off.
Well, at this point, he just has a sword and shield.
Oh, sure, yes.
And so my first thought was that this was like Orion.
Which would be great, like summoning literal constellations.
Yeah, and it makes sense because she's the astrologer. I actually had the image that Orion was up in the sky in my first read-through, or what I thought was maybe Orion was in the sky, but actually on my second read-through, I don't think that's ever specified. I think he may have just been standing in the street.
Yeah.
But you know, his eyes are lights, and there's all this like sun imagery, so like him being stars kind of lines up with the whole Orion thing. But there's no mention of a belt, and the belt is usually pretty important.
Yeah.
For Orion, so maybe I'm wrong, but in my head, this was, some sort of manifestation of the constellation of Orion.
Well, headcanon that, and we'll see how it turns out. I want to read out this very unexpected line, which is, Blake notices the snow piled on his shoulders, dusting his hair and pubes white. It just, I don't know why, maybe I'm just being immature, but it really made me giggle. It just feels like it comes out of nowhere. Like, it's a whole paragraph describing this, like, Greek warrior kind of style, and then the last bit is like, oh yeah, and there's snow on his pubes. It's like, what happened? What's going on here, Blake?
No, I agree. It jumped out to me and made me chuckle as well, which maybe I'm just immature as well, but like, because it is mentioned that he's naked, and like, so, like, of course, like, his crutch is out there to bear. So I don't know why the mention of snow on the pubes does it for me, but you're right, it does.
Yeah. So the Cabal is basically surrounded at this point. And there is an opening, but Fel kind of realizes, hey, this is a trap, let's not do that. And instead they try and break through a wraith to escape.
And that doesn't work at all. So then they end up running.
Yeah.
As I said, I feel like this ties into what happens right at the start with the sisters, where it works out for them there, but doesn't at all here.
Yeah. And actually, something interesting that happens is Evan tries to call on the hyena again to, get some more firepower, but the hyena basically says, "Nah, I'm cool in my sword," which is a bit of a dick move for the hyena, but I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, I tried to think if I felt like there was something more going on here, and I don't think so. I think this is just the hyena being a dick.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, he's gonna see violence either way, and that's what he really cares about.
Yeah.
I also just had to call out this bit where so Rose has unleashed Mary on the wraiths, and Mary tries to tackle this one wraith, but just sort of goes through it. And so then Blake narrates, she stabbed herself a few times in the thigh in irritation. And I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I guess you don't become an other if you're like well adjusted.
Like what a lovely bit of decoration on Mary's psychosis. It's great.
Yeah, it's great. I love. I mean, Mary has not got any characterization really at this point, but she is just it's fun to have a spooky, horrifying monster on your team.
Yeah, actually, I forgot to call out a bit before the grocery store stuff happens. Blake is sort of trying to look through the windows, and before he can sort of look through, the windows reflect, and he just sort of sees Rose standing there with Mary beside her, and he comments how imperious is the word he uses as she looks. Yeah. And I mean, given how things go at the end of this chapter, I feel like that those little bits of Rose characterization as she's becoming more confident in who she is might be very relevant. But yeah, I also like as they start to make a run for it after they realize they can't take on the Wraith. Blake goes and he gets June out, and he's sort of like, oh yeah, if the ghosts can sort of hurt Wraith, maybe June will have a go. Yeah, and I just thought this was hilarious because June's main power seems to be that she makes things real cold, and they're already in the middle of like a blizzard, basically. Right? So I don't know what he thinks she's gonna do. I
don't know why he. Well, he only has the one or two tools, right? He's got to use whatever he can. So the group kind of start to make a break for it, and they start to get out, but it comes at a cost. Blake turns around and sees that Alexis has gotten shot by an arrow from the astrologer's star warrior. And as he's watching, Fel also takes an arrow to the collarbone, and things are going bad.
Yeah, like this. And this is like the last 200, or maybe like 100 words of the chapter. And it really just goes from the usual Pact level of intensity to holy shit, like level 100 really quickly. Like, it reminded me of the first time I read through the Red Wedding part in Game of Thrones, where you just sort of like, oh, this is a bit tense. Yeah. What?
Yeah. But don't worry, it can always go worse, Elliot, because Blake's kind of watching this go down, and things kind of go into slow motion a bit, and then everybody stops, and Blake turns around, and Isadora is there. She says one or two pithy words to Blake, and then just fucking stabs him with her claws in the stomach, like tears him up so that you can see ribs.
Yes, it doesn't seem survivable.
Yes, it's bad. It's pretty bad.
It's so heartbreaking how it happens as well, because he's trying to drag Alexis into an alleyway to get her out of the line of fire, and he's like, please just let me help Alexis before you do this, and Isadora just like
shushes him.
Shushes him with the human hands while she's killing him with her lion ones. It's it's fantastic to read. Like, it hurts, but in all the ways it's meant to.
Yeah. And that's the end of the chapter. So, yeah, it's going well so far.
Yeah, let's hurry up and end this recording so I can go read 7.3.
Unfortunately, before that, we have other stuff to do, Elliot. Actually, we wanted to bring up a discussion question, because I really, really, really liked the answers we got to the last one about the alternate history stuff.
Yeah, me too.
And so I wanted to give people another discussion question that was a bit of kind of theory crafting, a bit more creative than some of the more analytical ones we've done. And so we see actually kind of what the astrologer can do, or part of what the astrologer can do in this chapter, but it's very different. And so we thought a fun discussion question might dive into having different ideas for other cool practitioner specialties that we could see. So I'm going to give you the official wording that we went with here, which is, practitioning is such a flexible and varied profession. What are some cool ideas for practitioner specialties that we don't see in Pact? yet, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, like, don't be the person who like pulls something from Arc 11 and just decorates it as your own original idea.
What about a lawyer who can summon demons? Huh?
Yeah, because the majority of the people are going to see through it. It's only going to be me who will not understand.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously, please avoid spoilers. But I mean, there's so much varied mythology around the world, and Pact is obviously borrowing bits and pieces from all different sorts of like ancient cultures and modern cultures to build its world. So I feel like there's so much to pull from. Like, I'm so keen to see what people come up with, and I'm hoping there'll be some answers that are just really like obscure mythology that I had no idea about.
Yeah, you sometimes see threads on the Parahuman subreddit that everyone should check out, by the way, that are like, oh, what would this Ward character be like as a practitioner, or what would this superhero be like as a practitioner? I'd be interested to hear people's takes on kind of mythological heroes and how they could be practitioners, which I guess is kind of just similar to our previous discussion question. But yeah, I think
we did really
cool.
like that one. So
yeah, it was awesome. So let's
round two.
Round two, yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'm excited to see what people come up with for this one. Yeah, fun stuff. Now, where can people put their answers to that, Elliot?
Well, in the show notes for this very episode, you will find the link to the discussion thread on Reddit, which is the best place to put answers for that discussion question.
Yep, we'll come back in a week and round off some of the best answers that we like the most. But until then, pop them into the discussion thread, or if you want, you don't have a Reddit account, you can tweet them to us on our Twitter, which is @MediaMDPodcast.
Yeah, or emailing us at mediamdpodcast@gmail.com is another option.
Yep, but mainly just pop them in the Reddit, I think is honestly the best answer. So if you want more information on Deep Impact or all the other great shows on the Doof Media Network, you can head to the website, which is doofmedia.com. I think we're actually about to wrap up the Ward fan art contest, right? That's closing in like a few days.
I think the applications have already closed, so our patrons are the ones
I'm thinking of the
voting.
Yes. Now, can anybody vote, Elliot?
No, just the patrons. So if you really want to get in and vote for your fan art that you submitted, but you're not a patron,
we can't keep talking about that. Scott will get mad at us.
Yeah, but so yeah, if you want to get in and vote for the art and have your say on which one you think is the best, then become a Doof patron. It's one of the many perks.
Yes, there are a lot of perks. Seeing the fan art and getting to vote on it is one, but of course you'll get access to the Discord server, Q&A. You can even prescribe media for the Doofcast podcast if you're at one of the higher tier perks. So all kinds of cool goodies you can get there. But of course, the most important goodie that you'll get is that warm feeling of knowing that you're supporting this show and all the other great shows on the Doof Media Network.
Yes, and don't forget the warm feeling you can get from donating to Wildbow as well, because obviously he's writing all these stories that we are talking about.
Yes, you really, every time Wildbow posts a new chapter, I go in and I pick a random word and I say, this word's the word that my donation helped create. And sometimes I get a really good one. So if you want to play that game along with me, head to patreon.com/wildbow and support Wildbow for writing all these great stories.
Apart from that, we'll see everyone on Monday the 3rd of June for chapter 7.3.
See you then.